Hello and welcome back to the MMA Split podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Josh.
And we're back to talk about everything that's happened in the world of UFC and MMA in general. Still just us. Sly is, I think, back today, but judging for how he spent his weekend, there is no way that he's watched this card. So we're going to be talking about UFC Vegas 34, Gastelum versus Cannonier, everything that happened in that main event and on the card. A little look across at what happened in Bellator and PFL, and of course, looking at the news as well. First and foremost, only one place to start. Actually, let's quickly touch on the Bellator and the PFL first, because they did technically happen before the UFC over the course of the weekend.
We're going chronologically today.
Exactly. Bellator, Cheat Congo, the master of the back from the dead comebacks, did it one last time. Not last time as in his last time, but yet again, even at his age of 44, 45.
Oh, man, I was going to guess 46, you know.
Something
very old. Very old for a professional athlete, but, you know, he's still an absolute legend.
Oh,
and, you know, he's only got one loss dating all the way back to 2015. So, yeah, Karatonov, I've only seen the highlights of it. Did look like a great fight. I do need to go back and watch it. I'm actually getting that sorted out this week, getting back on the old iPlayer.
Nice.
But, yeah, like Chekongo, fucking love the guy. Really glad he got the win.
It's not quite the Pat Barry come back from the dead, but
well, that one is unique. I don't think you'd get that today. I think Pat would have got the knockout by today's standard.
But no, he's still getting it done. Still getting it done.
Still get done. The reason I haven't watched Bellator is because the fight I was kind of most excited for, JJ Wilson against Adam Boric, got scrapped because JJ missed weight after talking all that shit about how this should be a number one contender spot. But you know, maybe that fight gets rebooked. We talked a little bit off air about how there's no rush to name a featherweight contender for Bellator right now. So, do you know what I mean? JJ was just chatting some shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, you could probably just have AJ McKee fight Pitbull for like the next 3 or 4 fights in 2 different weight classes, and it's still going to feel like the right fight.
I would love that. I would genuinely love that.
Just imagine if you got this crazy thing where like Pitbull wins the rematch at lightweight, but then they do another fight again at featherweight. The Pitbull wins, but then AJ wins the lightweight rematch, and they're just constantly trading belts.
It really depends how the second fight goes. But if Pitbull does redeem himself on this one, which for me as a fan is going to be like best case scenario, Matt, that could realistically happen. That could realistically happen.
How bad did Wilson miss weight?
Oh, Jesus. I think it was like 4 pounds.
Okay, so it wasn't that he was medically unfit. They just basically said, fuck it, this is too much.
Let's fact check that. This is why Sly should be here. I hate multitasking.
To be fair, Sly's role has very much changed from its first anticipated or intended iteration.
Yeah, like which was to be here, give us stats and whatnot, and not win the fucking picks too often.
Well, he's not won the picks this week, but we'll talk about that when we do the pick show, because
I haven't won the picks this week.
We were pretty close, man, on a lot of things. So I don't know if I've got enough differences to get me over the line.
Oh man, fuck it. 6-6, I think. I need to double check. I'm pretty sure I was 6-6. There was some I wasn't 100% on who I picked.
We'll touch on that when we get to the UFC show. Either way, yeah. Wilson missed.
Yeah, 4.5 pounds.
Okay. Does it say whether or not he was declared medically unfit, or whether or not the commission just said they weren't willing to go ahead with the fight? Or
actually, that's a good point. I don't know if it was Boric's camp or if it was the commission, but I didn't even look into it, because to be honest, I thought from Boric's side, that was just the right decision to make. Why give the guy as much as £4? When I say 4.5 pounds, obviously that's with the £1 allowance. So he came in at 150.5, which is,
Bad miss.
not ideal. Yeah, Boric has been, fighting his way back into contention after the Coldwell loss. And frankly, I just think, why make a stupid risk like that with the other guys taking the piss? Don't make it easy for him. And again, this is too far out to be a contender fight. So rather than take this fight and then win another fight, he could just win a fight closer to the Pitbull McKee rematch, and then he's got an idea of where he stands in the featherweight title picture.
Question: do you think that maybe the Bellator contracts are a little different? Maybe that lends guys to being less willing to maybe go ahead with the fight. Like, for example, maybe Boric was already going to get his show money for being there or something like that. So there's not that kind of same financial pressure.
That I don't know. It's interesting to speculate about, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're onto something there. But for sure, 1000%, they do not get punished and manipulated in the same way that fighters do in the UFC.
Well, even if you don't look at the punished way, there's very much an incentivization in the UFC for you to still accept the fight if your opponent misses weight. Not just because you don't get paid yourself, but because they give you that nice little sort of, you're going to get 20%. Imagine you guys have fight of the night. You get his side of that and your side of that. This could be a great little paycheck for you. They entice you into that method of thinking.
I don't think they're a carrot dangling kind of company. I think they go for the stick first. They go for it early. They go for it often. In fact, actually, all right. So I'm not up to date on the Ultimate Fighter because my girlfriend's been making me watch Love Island instead. But I am now up to the semi-finals, and I can say, gee whiz, what a surprise from Dana White when the guy gets the grade 2 MCL tear, and then Dana White's like, the doctor cleared him. He just doesn't want to fight. I love guys that want to fight, and I'm like, yeah, that's the same guy that would talk about concussions in this exact sort of framing 10, 15 years ago. I think Dana White, in a lot of ways, is a fucking douchebag. I think the fighting for the UFC fucking sucks when your opponent misses weight. I think unless the commission step in, they're going to force you to take that fight. It's just not worth pissing off the matchmakers. It's well documented how manipulative and how petty and vindictive they can be. So, yeah, I think fighters get forced to take those fights. I don't think it's an enticement thing at all.
Without a doubt. And touching on the Ultimate Fighter one, felt really, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because the guy was clearly injured, and there is the argument of, you're going to go into a lot of fights with an injury. You're not getting fucking paid for these fights, man. Like, it's a different fucking story. It's different when you've paid for the training camp and there's money on the table. That's not the same situation on the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, and even more talking about the economic level, if that dude gets a full tear on his MCL, now 20 years ago, that would probably have been a career-ending injury in most sports. And today,
not so much
with
the
advances
MCL,
in science,
but it's still like 9 months out.
It's not as bad as the ACL, but it was still, you were not the same. And frankly, even though surgeries come on so well, we can't guarantee that this guy is going to be able to get, probably the UFC foot the bill in that situation if he takes the fight, but you don't know for sure. And why risk the rest of your career over a fight that you're already massively impaired for? It's just not. I didn't feel like the guy pussied out at all. I felt really bad that Dana White kind of portrayed it that way.
Let's look at the other thing.
Dana.
Was he a middleweight? Was he one of the middleweights or one of the bantamweights?
Yeah, middleweight. Miles Hunsinger.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, I'm close.
Knowing that you're on the semifinals and not giving anything away, all I'm saying is that 3 of those other semifinal contenders that I can remember, you've got some scary fucking dudes there. That guy Andre is a beast. Brian Battle's a beast. Tresian Gore's a beast.
Yeah.
Gabriel Arguila? Urbina, that's the one. He looks like he's got some hands. You've got no guarantee you're beating 2 of those guys. You know what I mean? Semi-final and final. So it's a big risk to take. What I would say, though, is that the UFC will, like, just to kind of say the carrot and the stick, the carrot is also real. Like, I'm not saying that it's a good thing, but had he have fought, I think the UFC would have appreciated it and kind of given him some brownie points. And without giving any spoilers, but the guy who steps in on 5 days' notice, he, even though he lost that fight in a minute, is going to be on the card this weekend. He's getting a chance to be in the UFC and to be in the finals and stuff like that, fighting I won't say who he's fighting because it's a spoiler, but a runner-up, basically. So clearly what's happened is that Dana's been like, okay, this guy's stuck around with no guarantee he's going to get a chance, quit his job, came in, took a fight against a tough guy on 2 days' notice. Didn't work out for him, but fuck, he deserves the opportunity. So it does go in both ways, but certainly in that situation, I think the doctor really fucked him as well, because the doctor's clearly a sports doctor. And so he's going to say the guy's cleared to fight no matter what. If you go to a real doctor with an MCL sprain, they could be like, mate, don't walk on that thing.
Well, hang on, no, I think kudos to the doctor. He gave the guy the right information. Yes, technically you can fight on this. However, these are the risks. And as a professional athlete, that is the, what the fuck do they call it? Diagnosis that you would want the doctor to give you, for sure.
I completely understand. I only just mentioned in terms of when Dana White, for example, says the doctor cleared him, they're relying on the impression that the audience will get, which is how their doctor would respond to something.
Yeah,
like
it also gets downgraded to a sprain at that point. He sprained his knee. Like, nah, that's not what the doctor said.
No. Listen, let's move away from the Ultimate Fighter because we're going to touch this on the pick show, which
straight back onto Fighter Pay.
Exactly. Oh, we're straight back onto Fighter Pay. Oh yeah.
Well, we'll talk about the main event first.
Well, let's just touch on PFL very quickly, because Kyla Harrison is continuing her, one woman wrecking train of the hat that also runs in PFL. And in Victor at the moment. She's fighting in both. What do you expect? There's not a lot of girls that fight at 45 and 55. And she's a fucking tank.
Yeah.
She's going to run through all of them until she gets to Nunes. What are we even talking about? I will say,
though, Jenna Fabian, I think, will be a really good fighter at 55. And she's just really early in her career. I mean, I know Harrison looks like she's early in her career, but she's been training MMA actually for a decent amount of time. She did a shit ton of judo before that.
It's different when you're a double gold medalist.
Yeah,
like you've got one aspect of MMA completely and utterly locked down.
Yeah, whereas Fabian looks pretty fucking good. I think she's the cousin of Eugene Behrman, but she trains at City Kickboxing. I was impressed with her in her opening fight this PFL season. I'm trying to remember who the second one was against. But yeah, like, fuck it. Kayla Harrison is an absolute beast. It's very much like when Ronda Rousey was the dominant judo submission specialist at 35, because there weren't that many chicks coming into the game at 35. Her division was very much, when she went on her run, her division was very much populated with over the peak vets. No disrespect, ladies, but like, I'm just saying, like, she got to beat a lot of them. Maybe not at their best sort of stage of their career. Well, and Betch Gahea, but that's not fair because Betch Gahea just isn't a good fighter.
Not just that, but also I think she benefited from that. There was no 45 division, there was no 25 division, there was no strawweight division. So she was also the perfect size for the weight class against a lot of girls that maybe weren't as physically imposing because of just the fact they didn't have other options. If you look at, for example, like
Andrade.
Oh God, what's her name? Liz Carmouche ends up going down to 25 as soon as she can because she's just not really a natural 35er.
No.
So, the early days of a sport, and you could kind of see this a little bit maybe with a couple of the early defenses that like Joanna had at strawweight, and certainly some of the early defenses that Shevchenko's had at flyweight. It takes time for the division to develop its real seedings, for you to actually get a top 10 and true contenders.
So with Shevchenko, I blame Shevchenko. She could be fighting 20 years from now when it's much more commonplace to have a ton of women training MMA at a high level, she's still going to be one of the fucking elite. She is just in a whole different class of her own. She is something special.
Yeah. She's really catching Nunes up on the title defenses as well.
Well, she's a busy lady.
Hmm.
She's so scary. She honestly terrifies me.
Yeah. Without a doubt. She doesn't just have to hurt you with her hands and feet. She also knows how to use knives, guns, guerrilla warfare tactics. I mean, this is just a dangerous fucking human being. She's fluent in enough languages to travel the world undetected.
And she knows some of the scariest ones as well. Russian.
Yeah. Almost certainly a spy, but that's neither here nor there. Carla Harrison's a beast. She's going to go through everybody. It's a big difference you can see between, for example, her that you could say is new in the game is still fairly fresh in the game of MMA. And then it gives you perspective on just how far Clarissa Shields has to come before she's even really in consideration. I know people are talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great to see Shields versus Nunes? No. The dream fight is Nunes versus Harrison at 45.
Shit, I don't know if Harrison would want to cut all the way down to 45. I think it'd be pretty cool to see a fight someone like Cyborg at 55.
But she's done 45. She did 45 at Invicta. Carla Harrison.
How long ago was that?
Not that long ago, man. Maybe earlier this year or end of last year. Because obviously PFL lets her fight in Invicta when the season isn't running.
Yeah. Shit, I don't know why. I just thought all those fights were at 55.
I think she knows as well that if she wants to get that big fight, she's got to be able to meet it at 45. Because the argument you could say is that Nunes is coming up. She's got to kind of meet her halfway and go down.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to happen, though. I don't think the UFC are going to sign any more female featherweights, let alone Harrison. So
maybe.
And they're not letting Nunes go.
No, but maybe they agreed to do the first crossover fight, UFC crossover fight. How good would that feel? They're just like, we're going to take your PFL belt. We're just going to take it. You're not even going to have it anymore. You won't even be able to do events with your champion because we're going to have your belt.
Well, the good thing about PFL is it doesn't matter. They just do it every year. So we'll try to do it every year.
And if the Nunes was to lose that fight, well, then they just scrap the featherweight division anyway. They're just like, yeah, this was cursed from the start. Who cares?
Done.
Right. Enough about PFL and Carla Harrison. Let's move on because Josh really wants to talk about fighter pay, but there's a fight that we've got to talk about first, which is Cannonier versus Gastelum. I think we pat ourselves on the back on this one. Apart from how it finished, we pretty much called it.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't give quite enough respect for excuse me, I'm gonna burp. There's nothing we can do about it.
Just let it go.
It was a little one. It felt so big as a little one. Yeah, we didn't give enough respect to Gastelum's chin. I thought perhaps the amount of damage he's taken, it might be on the way out. But I guess he's got at least that fight left in him. You know, knocked down twice, got back up straight away. But this was really tough for me to watch, man. I thought he won the first 2 rounds. I'm pretty sure the judges gave him the first 2, and then when he gets knocked down in the third, I thought it was like a real turning point, but also it was just kind of coming. Cannonier, that's what I was waiting for, and then
Cannonier fought a really smart fight. He adjusted very well, and I think the honest truth is that we talk about Gastelum's chin, but he was doing a pretty good job of not getting hit in the first 2 rounds, and then he gets dropped with effectively a jab. And I think it really changed his understanding of where he was safe and what he could handle. And I think for the final 3 rounds, there was maybe a willingness to mix things up and try different combinations in order to create space and sort of get on the inside. And then as soon as that first knockdown happened, you just kind of felt like he wasn't, like he went into very safe spaces, his kind of more basic combinations. He wasn't looking to stay on the inside as much. I think it just really affected his confidence. And I don't blame the guy. You get knocked down, you realize how fucking hard somebody hits, and you're like, oh shit, this is a different game. This is a different fucking fight. I've got to think about this differently. And, I mean, fair play to Cannonier. His cardio looked really, really good. He stayed very composed. He put in a very efficient, measured performance, and he showed that he could do that in a decision win over 5 rounds. It shows me a really high fight IQ. For Gastelum, it's just that feeling. And we talk about it all the time, but like, fuck me, if this guy gets a nutritionist and drops about 20 pounds, it's a fucking beast of a welterweight. But it's like when you're fighting, when you see it on the extreme side, and you don't see it as much when he's fighting Darren Till, when he's fighting Adesanya, who's not the biggest middleweight, when he's fighting Robert Whittaker, who's not the biggest middleweight, because it's the size doesn't feel like it's as present. And it's not necessarily a weight thing. It's just that what happens when you're dealing with a guy who's got 5.5 inch longer arms than you, and he's not even a tall middleweight. He's a short middleweight, but it works for him because he's got that body frame. It's just a different set of problems.
I mean, this is a middleweight that came into the UFC at heavyweight and was doing okay. And Gastelum, man, like we talked about it when we made the picks last week. I apologize for the dog. We'd love to see him at 170. The fact that he needed the extra hour to make weight for this one, I suggest he's going to turn 30 soon. It's probably not in his future. Still though, close fight.
Oh man,
he was 2 rounds, and all of the losses bar the Whittaker one, to be honest, and maybe to a lesser extent the Adesanya one. Very close fights. Up until the 5th round, that Adesanya one, or really, when he got dropped, when he slipped and got dropped in the 3rd round, up until that point, that Adesanya fight very close. This guy is an elite middleweight. He is better than his record looks, but if he's going to get losses.
Faced his losses. He ran into this, and really, I would have liked to have seen him fighting. I thought if Kevin Holland was to beat Chris Daukaus, that would be a good matchup. Chris Daukaus would have been a good matchup. I think sometimes you have to, confidence doesn't just come back with one win. And I think he got the Heinisch win and thought, I've got the win again. I can just chuck myself back in at the elite level. It's like, no, because you still needed to improve. And maybe you need to fight guys where you're not put under so much pressure and you kind of revert to what you feel is safe. You have that ability to kind of try these new things and work on these facets of your game. Similar to the Heinisch one, where we really saw how much work he'd been doing on his wrestling. None of that came into practice against Whittaker because it's just a jump to such an elite level that you're not going to use that newly found skill. You need time to develop that and implement it against the higher level guys. And it's a shame because now he's 5 losses in his last 6.
Yeah. And frankly, he's probably not too far away from being able to angle for a rematch. If Hermansson or Till loses their next fight, but he needs a bounce back win first. But if they lose their next fight, he can start going on a little revenge tour, start ticking off. Because to be honest, all his losses are kind of pretty much in the top 5. If he can get one back against Hermansson and maybe Till, assuming Adesanya beats Whittaker, it would be a big stretch. But if he could get it back against Whittaker as well, sure, he's back in contention. But he's got so much work to do now. He's really dug himself a hole here.
I think he needs to. I think the wrestling's a real key for him. The size.
Well, it is very much his base. He came into mixed martial arts as a high school wrestler. It's just, frankly, the guy's aggression, toughness, tenacity, and hands has really taken him so far. And aside from a few performances where he has leaned on the wrestling a little bit more, I wonder how well he can effectively implement it into his MMA game, because you just don't see it too often. I remember like Vitor Belfort, Tim Kennedy, he looked pretty good offensively and defensively in his grappling, but those guys aren't exactly going to test you the most. And yeah, fuck, it's a real unknown because he just doesn't do it.
I just think for the height that he's giving up, for the fact that he's not got the longest arms, not got the longest legs, He's the body type that I don't think the boxing's enough. Like you see the Whitaker fight, and particularly in this fight, he didn't have enough weapons in many ways. And wrestling is the big weapon that you could implement. You know, the ability to keep a guy guessing, is he coming in to land a combination or is he coming in to take me down? Completely changes the game. And I think he was just a little too predictable. But listen, man, fair play to Cannonier. The guy's a beast. And as we found out in his post-fight speech, he fucking needed the win money.
Yeah, well, even the win money isn't really enough. And it's not going to get any better because the UFC went on a purge of high earners, replaced them with a lot of great value, with very low contracted fighters through like contender series and short notice replacements. And he's not really going to take a big step up in pay unless he gets a belt, interim or otherwise. It's really unfortunate. It's not the way it should be, but man, it's just a really shit time to be an elite fighter that isn't a champion in MMA right now.
Yeah. Well, I think there's another factor with Cannonier that I would chuck in as well, because I do think there's a decent, Max Kellerman used a good expression, which I think is very true. I think there's a middle class in the UFC that is pretty large and is reasonably well established. And what I mean is that there's a sort of median base amount of pay that if you're a ranked and if you get to a certain point, it's not the money that you're looking for. It's not kind of boxing's high level money, but it's maybe better than the equivalent level in boxing or kickboxing pays. I think the issue for somebody like Cannonier is that he dropped down. He was an unranked heavyweight, unranked light heavyweight, drops down to middleweight and wins 3 big fights in a row. Right. He gets the, I don't know what his first win at middleweight was, but obviously he has the Anderson Silva win. He has the knockout of Jack Madsen that really propelled him up the ranks. And suddenly then you look across and he's fighting Robert Whitaker. I think he moved up too quickly. I think he moved up way too quickly. And for just bear in mind, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying that if a contract isn't being negotiated there quite quickly, you end up in this situation where you're on a sick contract. And part of the problem is that when you're fighting lower ranked guys on a contract like that, and you're only fighting 3 rounders, and maybe you're winning those fights a little bit more easily, you're not taking the same kind of damage in training camp or in the actual fight itself, you can have 3 or 4 fights a year and it looks more financially beneficial. After the Whitaker fight, he's not fighting for a year. And when you're doing a main event, you're taking a lot more damage. It's a lot of the training camp. He's not going to jump into a fight in 2 months' time, even if he wants one, because there's a certain amount of recovery. So all of a sudden, you cut that fight number down by a quarter. And, you know, the contract that already wasn't maybe as good as you wanted to suddenly really isn't paying the bills.
Yeah, man. And to be honest, I'm just looking up 12 UFC fights. He's 7-5. Obviously 4-1 in the middleweight division, though.
Well, that's the thing. So he probably had a contract that he negotiated when he was 3-4, or maybe 4-4. And maybe it was a 5-6 fight contract. He wanted to have that security. And then he goes on this meteoric rise and he's maybe earning a 40-40 and he's fighting Gastelum, who's probably on like 80-80 or 90 or something.
Oh, I think Gastelum's on more.
Even more. But you know what I mean? I mean, look at if you looked at the pay discrepancy between him versus Whitaker and him versus Gastelum, it's significant. And it's the difference between guys that have got contracts organized at that higher level and himself. And when you look at somebody like Sean O'Malley, that, you know, he's saying, I'm not, you know, on the contract I'm on right now, I'm happy to fight fucking new guy Chris Moutinho coming in on 5 days' notice. I ain't getting paid enough to fight fucking Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz and these guys yet. And there's something to that. There's something to that. Even though I don't like Sean O'Malley and I hate to give him props.
Yeah, well, there's kind of 2 schools of thought. You know, you can come in and try and do a McGregor and just tear through, be as exciting as you can, and leverage that popularity as often as you need to basically renegotiate every fight. And, you know, there are guys that slightly build up their records. you know, take the lower profile fights, maybe try and get bonuses. And like both of them have a lot of pros and cons. And just the truth is that combat sports across the board, athletes need to be paid more. But yeah, man, I think Cannonier's, I hope Cannonier's getting towards the end of his contract and he can renegotiate a better payday. It's really hard. 12 fights in, he might have renegotiated for the third time already, which means he probably renegotiated when he was on a losing record with the UFC. So,
but he's got leverage now. It's a shame because YouTube channel Jesse on Fire kind of touched on this. If you were looking at the money, if the money wasn't an issue, the smartest thing for him to do would just be to sit out and wait for a title shot. Because really, he's got it. Like, assuming Adesanya beats Whittaker in the rematch, it's only really him and maybe Till if Till beats Brunson, and he'd still be further ahead of that queue. But as he says, he's got to fight. He's got to fight again this year or towards the early stages of next year. Yeah. And that's good for his finances, but it's also risking a guaranteed title shot if he just does the Tyron Woodley and sits on his ass. And it's a hard balance. It's a difficult situation to be in. It's one that we don't see in sports where you're on a guaranteed paid contract. It's the unfortunate situation living fight by fight. And it sucks, man. It's a real human moment. To be fair, what he's clarified as well, he had an interview with Ariel Helwani yesterday. And what he has clarified is that it's not so much that he has an issue with the amount that he's being paid in the UFC, but it's an amount that was a lot more beneficial and, you know, financially realistic for him when he was fighting 3 or 4 times a year. And he hasn't fought for a year. So there's this kind of realistic sort of practical, if you're not working, you're not earning. But obviously, even with that in case, you shouldn't be fighting Robert Whittaker in a co-main event at UFC 254, you know, underneath a Khabib card, potentially for a #1 contender spot, and then be unable to go a few months without taking a fight.
Yeah, it's rough. And I think camp costs go up as you shoot up the rankings. You want to bring in better sparring partners. You want to get looks from, you know, every camp has its strengths, but they're always going to look at cross-training with other specialist coaches. And you're going to start getting the more expensive ones and flying them out and whatnot. And, you know, the higher you go, the more expensive it can get. And, you know, some fighters get panned for staying with their original camps and keeping it local rather than investing a lot. And then you got Misha Tate, who had a bit of backlash from complaining about, well, not complaining, but talking about how she'd spent basically her whole fight check on sort of training and traveling. And she's like, well, yeah, I'm investing in myself. This is what I want to do. And I think she's already kind of earned what she needed being an executive over at ONE FC. So
she's been on a 6-figure salary for the last 4 years. I think she's probably okay.
Yeah. But, you know, she got a bit of backlash where people are like, oh, well, you're spending beyond your means here. You know, you shouldn't be doing this. This is stupid. And
her husband earns good money as well. They're a dual income fucking household.
I know, but people are still going to talk shit. I know. And the truth is that like it's always going to be somewhere in the middle. Everyone has their individual balance. How much do you really want to invest on your camp when you're not going to be working until you're 70 doing this? So you need to start saving up for your retirement early and often.
This is true.
It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one. I feel bad for Cannonier though.
I feel bad for him as well, but let's not take away from the fact that this was an excellent performance from him. Great to see him back. Izzy loves this guy. Like, all Izzy wants is him and Darren Till to win fights. That's it. He wants to fight these 2 guys because he knows it's going to sell, and then and they're interesting and they're strikers. He's watching. Yep. I've never seen anybody so reluctantly sort of be almost dragged against his will into fighting Robert Whittaker. Like, he's accepted that's the guy, but at no point has he wanted that to happen. And he's made that abundantly clear.
Well, unless Whittaker shits the bed like he did in the last fight, Whittaker is not stylistically an easy fight for him.
No.
In fact, if it's prime, if it is peak Whittaker, this might be the worst matchup for him in the middleweight division. Whereas Till and Cannonier can both be sold as much closer, much more dangerous fights for him. However, those 2 guys, way more fucking hittable, way more hittable. and Izzy knows it. You know, that's why he was licking his chops at fucking Paulo Costa. And we were all like, "Oh, still, you know, Costa could be dangerous. He's a scary guy. He's the eraser." And, you know, Izzy just fucking ran through him. So Izzy knows what he's doing.
Very much so. Let's move away from this main event, but we can still talk about fighter pay or fighters' general situation of finance. Marco Madsen, good fight against Clay Guida. This was fun. Guida looked really good. He had his moments, just didn't have the physicality in the end to really. And when he couldn't implement his wrestling, you could tell that it's just not the same fighter. He's not fighting with the same weapons and tools and game plan.
Was looking to land power shots over volume, and it was a stupid game of play. I just think about like this reminded me of like a high scoring sport. You know, this is like cricket, this is like American football. Both guys were kind of being exciting and fun, and frankly landed more strikes than the main event did with 2 extra rounds. So this was a fun one, but this was just that old NFL adage of trading field goals for touchdowns. And, you know, Mark Madsen gets it done. I was surprised that this just stayed on the feet the entire time.
Yeah. Made it cool, though. It was interesting. And Mark Madsen's striking was a lot better than I knew it was, which was good. He's had a fucking rough year as well, though, man. He's been fucking down and out. He lost his house.
Yeah, his wife was diagnosed with, shit, was it MLS?
Yeah.
Major League Soccer. Yeah.
It's a curse I wouldn't want to befall on anyone.
Nah, man. Except Beckham.
Yeah, except Beckham. No, shitty story, man. And he said the only thing that got him through it was just that mentality developed in the Olympics. Just that.
Yeah, he was very excited when the decision got read.
Yeah.
That was Clay Guida was trying to awkwardly not get pied off, congratulating him. But he appreciated. That's how fucking intense Madsen was in that moment. Clay Guida was like, "I'll give him a minute, then we'll shake hands." Like he was a very relieved man. I felt that.
He had injuries as well from his last fight, Marco Madsen. Like he's had a whole load of shit that's kept him out of the octagon. And he came back and he looked good, really impressive. This was fun. Good fight. Clay Guida, man, listen, fuck. He wanted a younger guy. He got a younger guy. He lost, but he doesn't look out of place close to 40. It's crazy.
Nah, I mean, you know, Mark Madsen is going to be running out of time if he wants to make any kind of title run. And truthfully, I'm not totally convinced in his all-round game. But Clay Guida, this guy should be allowed to fight for as long as he wants to.
Yeah.
I still think Mark Madsen is an incredibly dangerous guy. Clay Guida made this fight very close.
And at 36, you wonder how long, like you say, there isn't a lot of time for Mark Madsen, and there isn't. How much is he going to improve? Is the big question.
Yeah, I mean, the striking game is adequate enough if he's able to use that just to create entries for his takedowns. But as good as Clay Guida is wrestling and defensively with his wrestling, if you can't use the stand-up game to take down a guy like Clay, then you're not going to be able to use the stand-up game against a lot of these top-tier lightweights. You know, Dustin Poirier is probably not getting taken down. Michael Chandler's definitely not. Charles Oliveira, all of these guys would be way too much for Madsen, as I view it. And like you're saying, this was kind of the test for me. If he couldn't blend it in and make it work here, I was never going to be convinced that he was going to be able to do it against much younger guys that actually, honestly, at a higher level than Clay Guida, as good as Clay Guida was in his peak. You know, still, never write a guy off. You never fucking know. It'd be interesting if he gets that Gillespie fight.
Gillespie would be fun.
Yeah,
there will be takedowns in that fight. Guarantee.
Fucking hope so.
Let's move down. Parker Porter looked surprisingly good, actually, I thought, against Chase Sherman. I thought Sherman was going to win, but Sherman didn't really look like he wanted to be there after about a minute and a half.
Which is what I anticipated. I just didn't figure the Parker Porter was still going to be sticking around. This is the Parker Porter I was trying to talk about before. Man made me look foolish when I sang his praises previously. You know,
Nice. The old
against Chase
switcheroo.
Sherman, two guys I'd really written off in this division. And I do remember when I said I picked Chase Sherman, I said barely. I really I've counted Parker Porter out too soon, right? Maybe he can have some fun fights. Maybe.
Right. Yeah, he got it done. Trevin Jones did not get it done because it turns up that Kakramonov is a beast.
Yeah, right. Like, who fucking saw this coming?
I didn't see this coming. Kakramonov just looked like a completely different level of fighter.
Yeah, man. These Kazakhstani boys, they are making some noise.
Yeah.
Fucking, it's so frustrating as well because like the whole time I'm watching it, I'm just thinking back to the Timo Valiev fight. Again, Trevin Jones getting beat pillar to post until he lands like a nice fucking shot. It just is it Kakramanov or Kahramonov? Because there's like that KH like
I'm saying
Kakramonov.
Kakramonov.
Yeah, all I know, John Anik missed a fighter meeting with him because he was traveling and he didn't seem too sure on how he was saying it. And that's usually my go-to gold standard. Like however Anik said it, that's how it's fucking said. Probably pretty much close. Apart from Ioana.
He's a beast, man, and the submission was sick as fuck.
Yeah.
Hey man, bantamweight, it's ridiculous. Bantamweight and featherweight are exploding right now. It's fantastic. It used to be lightweight and welterweight. Welterweight's gone off a little bit, but it's still got some big names that make it fun. Lightweight's still the star-studded one. But bantamweight and featherweight, there's not a lot of bad fighters, ranked or unranked, anywhere in there. And a lot of strikers as well, which makes it enjoyable.
No, and this is two guys that they've brought into the organization on short notice. And two very exciting fucking fighters. So
there you go. Vincent Pichel beats Austin Hubbard. Yeah, we pretty much called this, but this was a good fight, man. Austin Hubbard's so tough.
No, this was a fun fight. And I honestly feel like both guys' stock rises after this one. Results be damned.
Only thing I'd say, Austin Hubbard's having a few of those losses now in the UFC. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but you don't want to be the guy that just had a bunch of, losses where you looked good. Those need to be wins eventually.
Yeah. Although, I feel like he's exciting enough to get away with it for now. And I think back to guys like Charles Oliveira, at times had a fucking abysmal record with the UFC. Cannonier again. You never know. Not a lightweight, probably, unfortunately. It's a very stacked division right now. But Hubbard's an exciting guy, and I'll always be excited. I'm always going to be hyped up to watch him fight, basically. This is what I say when I say stock's gone up. I don't think they're going to cut him off the back of this. I think they'd be foolish to do that. And I think more than ever, people are going to be excited to watch this dude fight again.
Absolutely. And Pantoja versus Royval. Again, this was really fun. Royval, we like Royval, but we even said we need to see a little bit more of a body of work to get a sense of this. And he's got this really effective to a certain point way of trying to escape submission positions, which was this granny rolling and constantly scrambling. I think what we saw with Pantoja is that when you get to a certain level of guy on the ground and grappling, you need to have some defense that's before that point. You can't just be relying on a Grammy roll and always just finding a way to circle and scramble your way out of it. You've really got to focus on being a bit more effective at either establishing your own top control or keeping the fight on the feet. And I think that's the issue that Royval got. He kept doing it. He kept getting away with it. And then eventually it didn't.
Well, when he didn't, it was a pretty slick takedown from Pantoja. He kind of it's like this weird kind of drag trip thing he did. He kind of kicks out like the back of the knee. And that's how he's able to get him down to the ground while he's low enough down on the back. I honestly thought Royval was doing everything right. You know, against a guy like Pantoja, he did a great job of turning it into a high volume, scrappy, all facets of MMA dogfight. And it was exactly what Royval does well. And it's exactly how you're going to nullify a guy as skilled as Pantoja. And unfortunately, you know, Pantoja pulled off a really slick little moment. And that was that. But I almost still feel like I haven't seen enough of Royval yet, because what he was doing was working until Pantoja did something pretty fucking cool and just caught him. So
do you think he's jumped up a bit too much? Like, obviously, it's hard at flyweight.
no,
There's not that many fighters.
I really don't. I think this guy's right up there. Maybe.
No, but bear in mind, I'm not saying not that he shouldn't be ranked, but his last two fights and his last two losses are the current champion and Pantoja, who's probably one fight away from a. You could argue maybe if they do the Figgy trilogy with Moreno, then we're going to see Pantoja against Askarov as a rematch for the number one.
I think he's got the next title shot.
Pantoja or Askarov?
Yeah, no, Pantoja. I'd be surprised if they haven't already booked that fight. You know, he's got 1.5 wins against the champion. I'm sure, you know, the champion was there cage side for that one. They had that little moment after the fight. All very cordial, all very respectful. But I think that's going to be Moreno's next defense.
Where does Askarov fit into this then? Because Askarov's had a draw with Moreno.
Yeah, he's in the queue. He's in the queue. But I think Moreno, you know, having lost to Pantoja on the Ultimate Fighter, having lost to Pantoja earlier on in his UFC tenure, I think he's going to want that fight. And I think it's a good fight. I really do. Where's Askarov ranked right now? Have they updated the rankings?
I'm sure he's got to be number 2 or number 1. Probably number 2 behind Figgy. But they might have pushed Pantoja into number 2 after that, actually. But we're talking top.
Wasn't Pantoja was number 3, wasn't he?
Is he number 3? I thought we might have been 4 or 5.
So they haven't updated it yet. So he's still in at number 3. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he came into this fight at 3. Okay. Otherwise, I would see an arrow next to his name right now. So yeah, I don't know, man. Okay. I think 1.5 wins against the champ trumps a draw. I think Moreno is probably going to be more excited for that fight. Him and Pantoja have a kind of respectful kind of energy between the two of them. I think they just want to do it. But okay. Yeah,
my point still stands.
Right in there.
My point still stands, though. We're talking about title contender or champion level fighters in the division. And Brandon Royval was chucked into that after winning 2 fights. And I'm not he won against 2 good guys. He won against Tim Elliott and Kai Kara France, but maybe it's just been a jump to the absolute extreme level. And what you really want him is him fighting in that top 10, but not right at the top of it.
Honestly, until I see him get, like, you know, really convincingly beat, I want to see him at this tier. I want to see him against top 5 guys.
We've just been talking about Gastelum, man. Like, and how you can end up with a record that doesn't reflect your ability.
If you're in a division 15 pounds higher than the division you should be in, because you don't give a fuck about nutrition and you barely make weight for that division, and you're chasing losses and taking short notice fights, that's a stupid strategy. But if you're in your natural weight class and you're very competitive against these guys, and frankly, you know, I'd say give him at least one more top 5 fight before writing him off. You know,
I'm not writing him off. I'm not writing him off. I'm just saying that you don't want to have this promising guy that bursts in, wins his first 2 fights, looking fantastic, and then all of a sudden is on a 3-fight losing skid because you did a Darren Till and chucks him right up there.
Till's a little different, though. Till was a very one-dimensional striker in a division full of wrestlers. And Till didn't beat anyone of the same quality, I would say. You know, the Cerrone knockout was in the midst of a bad losing skid where Cerrone was clearly a bit over the hill. And, you know, he even had the fucking draw with Dolby, who even now people don't rate Dolby as highly as I do. And I'm still like, it's Dolby's not at that level. He's not at that championship level. So, I don't know, man. Yeah, usually I would side with you. Like, don't feed into the wolves, bring people up slowly. I don't know. I really like Roy Val. I'm really high on Roy Val. I think this. I think this kid could be pretty good.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one, but let's move on to the prelims, which you're going to have to talk about briefly because I didn't watch, but I did hear that there was some pretty fucking sick knockouts, 2 in particular, and then a couple of weird ones that you can take us through.
Yeah, so we'll just start. Like, Lingo Saldana was a good fight. I really wasn't sure who had taken that one, and I gotta be fair. Like, I can't remember who I picked. I think I picked Lingo. I can't remember though. This was a fun fight. I was gonna keep steaming through them because I just want to start talking about the knockouts. Kelleher, Pilate, just fucking domination from Kelleher. There's really nothing I can say without just shitting on Pilate pretty fucking hard. So just an amazing fight from Kelleher. He's definitely a bantamweight. I would love to see him go on a fucking tear through 35, but moving on. Nunes Malecki, man, I don't know what the fuck really happened to Malecki here, but she looked exhausted about 2-3 minutes into the fight. And Nunes, this girl hasn't got a lot of style or technique, but she hits pretty fucking hard. She hasn't really got much of a neck or shoulders. Everything just sort of seems to be geared towards one huge torso that just pumps pistons out. And, she did a lot of damage against a very tired, defensively poor Malecki. And even with 6 seconds left in the round, when she gets a knockout, a few seconds before that, even, I'm still like, I don't care how long's left in the round. I don't think she's getting to the second round. I think Nunes is going to knock her out because there was no defense. The girl could take one step back and no more without just shelling up. And it was just total mismatch. William Knight, Fabio Chiron. This was a crazy fucking knockout, man. This was very much like, as Chiron's coming in, I think Knight counters once, has his arm kind of out, throws out a straight arm and sort of shrugs at the last moment, catches Chiron on the chin. I guess the cumulative damage from the earlier strikes in the round, but I've never seen someone get knocked out with a shrug before. It was very Parisian. Nacho Bahamondes against Roosevelt Roberts. This was a good fight.
I've seen the knockout on this one. I've seen the knockout on this one.
Now, in this fight, these boys are exhausted for a good reason. And man, but by the time Bahamondes, we were talking about it off air, and I was like, it wasn't impressive that he was able to hit him hard enough to knock him out at that point. It was impressive that he was able to throw that kick and land that kick. And frankly, there was no way you landed that kick and didn't knock him out because Roberts was dead on his feet by this point.
Was Bahamondes very clearly winning the fight?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hang on, I got the stats up. Yeah, 105 to 55 significant strikes. Strike differential of 50 in a 3-round fight. Jesus. But yeah, it wasn't like Roberts didn't have moments here and there. It was just that Bahamondes just had such a good, long, awkward style. And of it, like, this kid was trying to knock Roberts out all the way to the end, which is how he was able to knock Roberts out at the very fucking end. 5 seconds left on the clock. Just get to the record for latest knockout of the night. Well done, Nacho. And then Brahimaj against Palatnikov. Again, just looked like another mismatch. Brahimaj got him down, and that was all she wrote.
Fair enough. Didn't see the prelims, but I thought the main card was pretty good. I enjoyed watching the highlights of the knockouts I missed from the prelims.
Good prelims. Good card. Good card. And 8 out of 10.
Nice. I like that. I won't raise it because I didn't give it a full viewing, so I can't be accurate. But
what do you give the main card?
I'd say a solid 7.5 maybe. I'd say solid 7, actually. I think he probably bumped it up because the prelims had 4 really interesting knockouts in a row. And then a couple of good fights. I saw the results. I didn't see it live, so I don't get that same enjoyment from it. Very excited about the UFC this weekend, though. We've got the Ultimate Fighter finale, plus the liver-crushing main event between Giga Chikadze and Edson Barbosa. That is going to be a hell of a lot of fun. And a couple of other good fights dotted around the card as well. We've also got Tyron Woodley versus Jake Paul this weekend. Do not worry, Josh. Do not worry. I am going to do a Boxing Briefs special episode with Tom tomorrow on that, which does not have to involve you in any way, shape, or form. I'm sparing you from any conversation on this topic involving yourself. But we will have some coverage.
No Laurie.
I haven't messaged Laurie. I'll message Laurie about that as well, see if he wants to jump on.
If Laurie's in, I'll jump in for 5, you know.
I'll see. The only thing I worry with Laurie is I'm very short on time tomorrow because I'm playing football in the evening. And I've only got like a little slice of time after people finish work and shit like that in the afternoon.
Fair enough.
If I can get Laurie on, I will. But yeah, we're going to have that. We're going to do a pick show just on the UFC separately as well, which of course will involve Josh, and we'll get Sylvester back as well. That probably is going to be on Thursday. Before we go though, a couple of things. Let's just do a quick look at the news. I just found a bit of surprising news that came out yesterday, but I didn't see. Finally happened. Damian Maia and Jimmy Rivera no longer under UFC contract.
Oh, they cut Maia. He only wanted one more fight.
They cut Rivera, man. Jimmy Rivera.
Who else? Last week they cut someone that surprised me as well.
They cut a few.
Yancy Medeiros.
Yancy Medeiros. They cut Brian Benoit as well.
Yeah.
It's cutting season. But obviously very sad for Damian Maia and Jimmy Rivera to go. I mean, Damian Maia I can understand based on the age, but like you say, he only wanted one more. Jimmy Rivera's got a lot of gas left in the tank. I didn't think I'd see him go.
No, he's a good fighter. He's a top level bantamweight. I wonder how much of that might have been kind of like by mutual consent though, from Rivera's end. I don't know who his management team are. If he's got any kind of like halfway powerful management team, it might have been a feeling out process to get paid for like Bellator or PFL or Ryzen or One or whoever.
Oh, he'll definitely go to one of those. And let's be realistic about Rivera as well. Really good fighter. He's mainly got losses to a lot of the guys who are ahead of him in the queue for the title. And there's a question about, like, you look at what Aldo did to Pedro, and then you look at what Pedro did to Rivera. There is a real question about, is the UFC the division where he's really going to get to that higher pay bracket and the title shots and the championships and all that?
Well, he's also had... Yeah, he's had a lot of close fights. He's had injuries and layoffs. And I just feel like, so I'm basically going to make the same point, but I want it to be a little bit nicer to Jimmy. Sorry, Matt. I think, if you went to Bellator and beat some guys that are like discernibly like beneath him in terms of technical ability and physical ability, it'd be nice to get through these fights a little more unscathed, be a little more active and kind of get a little closer to your potential.
100%, but always a shame to see him go. Two great guys. Obviously, Damian Maia is a legend in the UFC. One of the few specialists who's really just been able to do that one thing. And it's worked out well for him. Other things in the news, always an interesting one. Giga Chikadze said he wants the backup spot for Volkanovski Ortega. So he's obviously so confident that he's going to beat Edson Barbosa that he's already thinking about being completely unscathed to be in a backup spot less than a month later. Love the confidence. I wouldn't be quite as confident if I was about to fight Edson Barbosa, even if I thought I was going to win. I don't think that's a fight that you bank yourself to walk away from without a trip to the doctors, personally. But I like where the head's at. And got to touch on
10 out of 10 for heart, 2 out of 10 for brains.
Exactly. Talking about, heart versus brains, parts of the body and medicine in general. Michael Chandler will not get the COVID-19 vaccine despite its FDA approval and the fact that he is booked to fight in New York that are going to make it a mandatory requirement. I'm kind of with him on this one. Like, if you say you don't want it, then you're not on the card, fair enough, but I do think that should be your choice. It's very as he points out, it is literally in the Constitution of America that you cannot force people to take medicine. So I understand. But New York's kind of fucked.
Events have been moved for picograms. I think they just moved that fight to a different card. I don't see that it has to be too much of an issue. There's a lot of time between now and then anyway. Who's scheduled to headline that card anyway?
That's Usman versus Covington too. It's a fucking good. The card's gonna be fucking stacked no matter what. You know what I mean? They'll fill that card with good fights all the way up and down. I think that's going to basically be their sort of. I think it's in November. That's going to be their sort of end of season showpiece headliner, basically. Stick it on 269, stick it on 267 if the guys don't mind it being moved ahead. Yeah. I don't think O'Malley.
Lot of ways to do it.
O'Malley doesn't want to have to fight in New York. I think he's kicking up a fuss as well. It's an understandable situation. I personally think that whatever the rules are with something like that, in terms of if you're visiting in a normal capacity, I think when you look at something like the UFC Fight Week and how controlled it is and how basically the guys are going between their hotel room, media, straight back to their hotel rooms to do training, I don't know why they can't just make an exception. It's not like the guys just going and integrating within New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not jumping balconies for potatoes, you know, just sensible people doing sensible things.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, why did he take the fight on that date? That's the part that confuses me.
Have they actually like signed contracts for that date?
Yeah.
Like all I knew is that like the agreement was in place, but I didn't think everything was like signed, sealed, delivered at this stage.
I assumed everything was signed, sealed, delivered. You might be correct. Maybe this was the final stumbling block because like New York's had this policy in since before the fight got announced. It's not like he agreed and then they came up with this vaccination policy. Like New York's been a little clear. It just seems strange to me.
Well, yeah, the timeline as I saw it is they were talking about doing this fight, all fine. And then they started talking about doing it in New York. And Chandler picked up on the fact that that meant he would have to be vaccinated and said that that was probably going to be an issue. He wanted to do his due diligence and that he didn't really feel like that was going to be done by the time that fight rolled around. So as I understood it, they were kind of saying that Chandler, like, we'll try and figure it out, maybe kind of just a stall for time tactic. And I know that Chandler people try to kind of hold him to the standard of the FDA. And he's gone, well, actually, that's not in everything that I need to feel secure in this. And again, I agree with you. People should be allowed to do what they want. I didn't think they'd actually finalized the bout agreements and set the date. So I could be wrong, but I would be surprised if Chandler had signed for this one. Because like you say, like he was well aware of the situation. So it's not like COVID was going to be gone.
No.
In a month or two. So
all very strange. We'll move away from that, touching on a bit of other quick pieces of news. Dan Hooker versus Hack Paras has been added to UFC 266. I think a really good fight for Hooker. Bounce back fight, dangerous guy, but somebody that I think Hooker's got the skills to beat. I think Hooker should be beating Hack Paras.
I've got it a little closer than you. I think this is good matchmaking. I think Hack Paras is going to give Hooker issues. I don't think Hooker should be losing this fight under any circumstances, but I think it's going to be a really fun, close fight. And I think it's going to be a good like action fight that Hack Paras is going to see his stock rise a little bit, even if he does lose. Just keep it competitive and prove that you're around that kind of top 5 level. There he is. I knew he was going to do that jump off and shot, the little prick.
Just wants
what
to
are
be
you trying to steal? It's just chew toys on the table. There you go, buddy.
Well, final bit of news I want to touch on. Still talking about fights rather than talking about fights being added. Talking about a fight that we've lost.
Sorry, but I was going to quick say as well. You see the thing about Arman Sarukian and Dan Hooker. So Dan Hooker has come out now and said Sarukian has shit for brains. Apparently they were going back and forth on social media, probably Twitter, and basically agreed to have a fight. And then Dan Hooker finds out that Sarukian's already booked to fight someone else. So then he just takes the hack for ass fight. He's like, how fucking stupid is this kid? He's trying to book a fight with me when he's already got a fight booked. And I agree. What a stupid fucking tactic.
Stupid, and it's still a stupid tactic, but sounds to me like he's trying to get the shine and the rub of a big name without actually having to fight him. You know what I mean? You get your name out there, it sells a bit more because Dan Hooker's a more established guy, and you do all of this trash talking knowing that you don't actually have to back it up.
I don't know, maybe.
Or maybe
I honestly just think he's just that stupid that he thought he could book 2 fights at once. A la Khamzat Chimaev. But, you know, Sarukian's on his way up. And that fight could happen eventually. Just fucking bad timing. That's what I'll chalk it up to.
Agreed. Talking about guys with bad timing. Sorry, because I just want to segue and wrap this up. Gustafson's out of the September 4th fight, Paul Craig, which is a real shame.
Yeah, I hope they just rebook that.
He gets a lot of injuries, Gustafsson.
Yeah, and you know, not young, and kind of heavyweight is over. Going back to cutting the weight, that's not getting any easier. I still want to see this fucking fight rebooked though. It's not like Paul Craig. Or I hope Paul Craig's not in that same Cannonier bite where he feels like he has to constantly fight. That's a guy that's kind of slowly on the rise as well.
I don't think he is. Paul Craig tends to get bonuses. He tends to be reasonably active.
Trains in Scotland.
But it's a shame because I like Paul Craig. I actually thought that was a good fight for Paul Craig. It was the kind of name that would really sort of boost him up. I eventually would have liked to see him fight Anthony Smith. I don't know if he's going to take a short notice replacement. If they push it back, there hasn't been news. We just know it's an undisclosed injury and it's been pushed back, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. It's the fight game. On that note, only one final thing to say, because I noticed this on the comments on our last video, but massive shout out to Trifo, who is a fan of ours all the way across from the States. He was watching our Twitch stream, very active on the Twitch stream with me and Sly that we did for the watch along for UFC 265. And he's moved across to watching the YouTube videos as well and left a comment. So Trifo, as our guest, who is the furthest distance away from where we do this, you're officially added to our podcast ending, along with our first fan, Laurie, and our most loyal fan who hasn't himself been on the show yet, Dave. So you're in very prestigious company. But tune in for a couple more videos this week. We're going to be doing the Woodley Jake Paul discussion video with Tommy Trolls. Sly might join for that as well. And then me, Sly, and Josh will all be back for the pick show for the tough finale, Giga Chatsi versus Barbosa. So then, guys, everybody have a great week. Take care. And bye, Laurie.
Bye,
Dave.
Laurie.
Bye, Trifo.
Bye, Dave. Bye, Trifo.